But believe it or not, my son was my best friend. I miss him a lot.
He paid.
But my whole thing is, my way of thinking is why I have Biggie even in LA after Tupac died.
What if the secrets behind one of hip-hop's most notorious tragedies didn't just vanish with Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B I G? What if, all this time, the real ticking time bomb sat not in the vaults of a record label, but in the final, unwavering words of his mother, Voletta Wallace, a woman who spent 3 decades battling sharks in the entertainment world to guard her son's legacy, and who, in the very last days of her life, left behind a document so loaded, so radioactive, it could detonate the cozy power structure of the entire industry? That's the scenario haunting everyone, from platinum-selling moguls to the lawyers now circling Biggie's empire like vultures. With the recent passing of Voletta Wallace at the age of 78, we now know her last act wasn't just to bless the Primary Wave estate deal, it was to slip in, through her will, hard evidence that might finally answer the question, was Biggie's exit just a random tragedy, or the result of a plot cooked up in back rooms, fueled by the same egos and ambition that made him a star in the first place?
She mentioned my name. My fraternity brother, Bill Willard, was right there and said, yo, that's my fraternity brother, Gene Deal. I know him, I could call him right now. I went up to see Miss Wallace, brother. And she took me around her whole house and I seen the memorial of Big.
We need to talk about Voletta, not as the matriarch we've all seen in funeral tributes and Empire State Building ceremonies, but as a mother who spent every waking moment since 1997 in a war she never signed up for. She wasn't just Biggie's parent, she was the force that turned a $10 million inheritance into a 9-figure empire. She made sure her son's face was immortalized on skyscrapers, entered the world of crypto before most industry executives even knew what the blockchain was, and negotiated deals that put Snoop Dogg's merchandising hustle to shame. If you think she was some sweet old lady just rubber stamping contracts, think again. Multiple industry sources say Voletta fought tooth and nail with the most powerful names in music, and she was no stranger to threats, direct and indirect. And yet, in the weeks leading up to her demise, she was adamant. The Primary Wave deal had to be completed. She insisted. She warned those closest to her, quietly, that the stakes were higher than anyone outside her inner circle could possibly imagine.
I used to be hurt because I knew the people that she had around her was Puff boys. So we could never connect like that. So only time I tried to connect with Miss Wallace is when she needed me and she used Perry Sanders to call me.
What was really going on in those closed-door negotiations? Why did Voletta, after decades of controlling every move, suddenly rush to get a deal inked just weeks before her passing? According to Variety and the Wall Street Journal, this was not a routine catalog sale. This was a fire sale under pressure. We know that Primary Wave picked up 50% of Biggie's music, publishing, name, and image rights, with the estate reportedly valued at over $200 million. But it's not just the numbers that are causing industry types to sweat. The most damning rumors now swirl around what Voletta herself put on record in her final days, that both Sean Diddy Combs and Jay-Z, the very architects of Bad Boy and Roc Nation, the two power players who shaped an era, weren't just negotiating. They were, in Voletta's words, actively intimidating her. A longtime estate confidant claims Voletta told her inner circle, if anything happens to me, look at who stood to gain. Whether that's caution, paranoia, or a mother's sixth sense, it's hard to ignore.
Like I told people, I said if Miss Wallace would have called me and told me to shut it down, I would have shut it down. Miss Wallace ain't called, she knew how to get in touch with me. If Miss Wallace didn't tell me to shut it down, I'ma keep doing it because I respect you, Miss Wallace.
People close to the family whisper that Voletta kept detailed notes, recorded phone calls, and even compiled a sealed envelope to be opened only after her demise. That envelope, according to one ex-manager, contains records of threats, manipulation campaigns, and years of pressure tactics by Diddy and Jay-Z to get control of Biggie's legacy. Remember, Diddy's Bad Boy Records only raised the estate's publishing stake to 85% because Voletta wouldn't back down in the early 2000s. And it was Voletta who called the shots when, in 2020, she clawed back the last 15%. To her, every deal was about keeping her son's memory in her hands and keeping the wolves at bay. So why, in her final weeks, did those wolves appear more desperate than ever? One industry veteran, who's been in these negotiations from the beginning, insists that the atmosphere turned strangely hostile just after New Year's. The rumor mill has churned out the same whisper over and over. Diddy and Jay-Z wanted the estate deal closed fast, and they weren't afraid to use leverage? Was it about cashing out before Diddy's latest round of legal troubles blew up in his face? Was Jay-Z the ultimate chess player, just tying up loose ends before the next big industry move? Or is it simpler? Did they both know that if Voletta kept digging, she'd finally connect the dots between Biggie's unsolved case and the true motives behind all those East Coast, West Coast power plays? We can't help but notice that news of the deal-breaking hit just a week after Voletta passed away, with her hand, we're told, still guiding the signature.
We absolutely believe it was purposeful.
You know, have any suspect?
Well, being that we are not the authorities, the legal authorities.
What exactly did Voletta leave behind? The talk now is of explosive evidence, a term that has record execs reaching for the antacids. According to a source familiar with the will, the documents include transcripts of meetings, copies of emails, and a handful of voice memos, allegedly featuring not just legal threats, but real-world intimidation. There's even a claim that Voletta hand-wrote a letter warning that if anything happened to her, her confidants should release everything to the press. If you're thinking this all sounds like the plot of a made-for-streaming true crime doc, you're not alone. The only thing missing is a Netflix logo. But unlike Hollywood, these allegations could have consequences far beyond TV ratings. In one moment, we're reading about Voletta Wallace being honored at the Empire State Building. The next, we're told she was warning friends that danger was closing in. It's impossible to ignore the timing. This is a woman who watched her son's case go unsolved for nearly 30 years, who saw the same names always hovering near the center of every theory in every lawsuit. Diddy, Jay-Z, Suge Knight, and a handful of shadowy fixers now long out of the spotlight. Now, just as one of the most lucrative estate deals in rap history is finalized, she's gone. And the only thing standing between the truth and the public is a manila envelope full of secrets.
A hearsay situation over a 27-year-old case with a multimillionaire like Puffy that's gonna have the best defense that money could buy. I don't think is ever gonna happen.
Let's not forget the context. Diddy is currently facing the fallout of years' worth of allegations, courtroom drama, and an empire teetering on the edge. Jay-Z, for his part, is still the king of business chess. He's been in the room for the biggest catalog sales since Queen, Bob Dylan, and even Michael Jackson's estate. With numbers like $100 million flying around, the stakes are clear. Whoever controls the rights, controls the narrative, the money, and the future. For two men who made their names on deals, bravado, and never blinking first, letting Voletta hold the cards was never an option. If the rumors are true, their negotiation tactics went way past polite legal wrangling. We can't ignore the timeline. It wasn't long after Diddy's legal scandals ramped up, an avalanche of accusations, a courtroom verdict that sent shockwaves through every boardroom from LA to Manhattan, that the pressure on Voletta to finalize the estate deal increased. One former road manager claims the urgency wasn't about maximizing value, but about silencing questions before they hit the mainstream. They didn't want her talking to the FBI, says the source, who points out that most industry suits would rather lose millions than let agents start poking through their contracts.
Or not even, you fight for justice pretty much, and hoping that the authorities would bring someone to, to responsibility.
The biggest wild card in this whole saga? Voletta's apparent belief that her own life was at risk. She allegedly told her lawyers to distribute her proof immediately if anything suspicious happened, a detail that, while unverified, has been repeated by 3 separate estate insiders. And while nobody from Diddy or Jay-Z's camp has commented publicly on these claims, you'd better believe the silence is louder than a Brooklyn block party. So we're left staring at a story that's equal parts Shakespearean and straight out of the LA Confidential playbook. On one side, a grieving mother who refused to let her son become another commodity. On the other, 2 moguls whose reach stretches from Wall Street to the White House, desperate to keep control as the ground shifts under their feet. The world always wanted to believe there was more to Biggie's story than a random drive-by. Maybe Voletta was the only one brave, or reckless, enough to leave the answers in plain sight. What did she really know about that fateful night in Los Angeles? What was she so afraid of in the final weeks? Is this the proof we've all been waiting for, that Biggie's untimely exit wasn't just a loss for music, but the endgame in a much larger plot?
But a lot of evidence points to it having been very much planned out.
We watch as the power struggle over Biggie's legacy takes on new meaning, a game that looks less like business and more like a desperate last stand. The primary wave deal wasn't just a transaction, it was the music industry's equivalent of a land grab, signed off in the shadows while Voletta's health was failing. The timing is impossible to ignore. Just weeks before her passing, 2 of the most connected figures in modern music, Diddy and Jay-Z, finally locked in a deal that handed over half of everything: the music, the name, the likeness, the future. We hear sources call it a consolidation of influence, but what's being whispered behind closed doors is far darker. With the estate valued at over $200 million and Biggie's cultural cachet only growing, it's clear this was about more than profit. Was it a strategic move to sweep up every loose end, or something more urgent, an effort to bury secrets before they could see daylight? The story takes a sharper turn when we examine what was really at stake. Primary Wave now sits alongside estates like Bob Marley, Whitney Houston, and Prince. But Biggie's deal is different. Here, the question isn't just about catalog rights. It's about who writes the narrative and who erases the past. Voletta's final evidence, locked away in her will, puts new pressure on everyone with something to hide. We're told the explosive evidence she left behind doesn't just cover business strong-arming. It connects to the shadowy world that's always hovered around Biggie's fate. The fact that this monumental transaction happened so close to her last breath makes even seasoned industry insiders nervous. Some see it as a sign the moguls wanted to control the flow of information, closing the circle before anyone else could step in. As one veteran entertainment lawyer puts it, deals this size don't close on a whim. There's always a reason someone's in a hurry.
I knew that somebody was going to that night. Somebody was going to get shot.
That urgency might have roots in something bigger. As more details leak out, a second rumor pushes the stakes into true crime territory. For decades, the whispers have been there. Insinuations that Biggie's tragic ending was more than a random drive-by, that it was a surgical strike designed to protect the profits and power of Bad Boy Records and its affiliates. Now, with Voletta's revelations gaining traction, some say the financial motives are finally too big to ignore. There are persistent claims from former bodyguards, lawyers, and even family friends that as Biggie's fame soared and conflicts escalated, he became as much a threat to those around him as an asset. In this telling, his exit wasn't just a personal betrayal, but a business move, a way to secure dominance, keep the money flowing, and stop Biggie from ever leaving Bad Boy or taking his catalog elsewhere. The coincidences pile up. Every time Biggie tried to renegotiate his stake or step outside the lines set by his handlers, he met resistance. Multiple people close to the estate say that just before his ambush in Los Angeles, he was considering changes that would have upended the power structure at Bad Boy and beyond. What if he had lived to see those plans through? What fortunes and what secrets would have been at risk? The rumors grow even more chilling when we look at the players involved. Both Diddy and Jay-Z had direct stakes in the success of the estate, and both have been linked through intermediaries and industry fixers to people later named in conspiracy theories and criminal investigations. No one's produced a smoking gun, but the fog of suspicion is as dense as ever.
Wasn't no drive-by. Car was standing there at the corner. We talk about all the time, bruh.
This is where Voletta's will becomes more than just a legal document. It's a weapon. According to a former estate accountant, the contents could implicate not just business partners, but a whole ecosystem of handlers, lawyers, and executives who stood to gain from Biggie's silence. There's talk of handwritten notes laying out a timeline of intimidation, of phone records linking back to figures in both the East and West Coast camps, of messages warning that the truth will come out no matter what. We're not just talking about tabloid fodder, we're talking about material that could spark criminal probes, lawsuits, and the kind of reputational fallout that brings down empires. We can't ignore what this means for the future. With Voletta gone, the only thing stopping the truth from vanishing forever is the resolve of those she trusted. Will her final evidence ever make it to court? Or will it vanish into the black hole of non-disclosure agreements and sealed settlements? There are already whispers of legal challenges from estate insiders, of journalists circling the story, of rival moguls preparing for fallout. Previously, guys Wayne Barrow and Mark Pitts went on and started working out deals to allegedly sell Big's publishing, his marketing, all his rights to everything, said one of Diddy's former bodyguards, pointing out that these representatives were Puff's boys. A detail that seems small until you realize how often the same names surface whenever money and motive intersect. As the new era of Biggie's estate unfolds, the legacy itself hangs in the balance. Will the next generation, his kids, his fans, and the public ever get real answers? Or will the past remain wrapped up in the velvet ropes of power, with every attempt to dig deeper met by more silence, more NDAs, more erased emails? We see how other legendary estates have weathered storms, Queen's billion-dollar payout, Bob Dylan's multi-million-dollar deals, but none of them carried this level of personal intrigue, this sense that the music is just a mask for a much darker story underneath. Every tribute and mural becomes a little more bittersweet when you realize how many people stood to profit from keeping the truth just out of reach.
She was, I think, understanding clearly what had happened, and I think she was starting to see that other people were responsible than who she previously had believed.
The music industry, for all its glitz, runs on secrets. And secrets have a way of leaking, especially when so much money and history are at stake. As more details about the Primary Wave transaction emerge, industry players brace for impact. If even a fraction of what Voletta left behind is real, the lawsuits could drag on for years, and the ripple effect would touch everyone from old-school record execs to the latest streaming platforms now cashing in on Biggie's name. Meanwhile, the fans are left to connect the dots, sifting through a maze of headlines, leaked files, and suspiciously timed statements. The people who promised to keep Biggie's legacy alive may be the same ones scrambling to control what the public finds out next. With the lines between tribute and cover-up now blurrier than ever, we have to ask, who really wins when legends are bought and sold? And what does it cost to keep the truth buried? Are we on the verge of seeing the entire hip-hop house of cards tumble? Or will the biggest secrets still stay locked in the vault, protected by the world's richest and most ruthless gatekeepers? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe about Voletta's final warning? Could the next headline finally bring down the giants, or will the legacy of Big E remain forever haunted by what we're not supposed to know? Stay tuned, keep questioning, and until next time, keep your eyes wide and your ears open, because in this story, the silence speaks louder than words.